So let's open in prayer. Take a deep breath. Nice, slow, deep one. Allow your body to relax. And turn your attention to that inner sanctuary, that place where you connect with the Christ. We're grateful for this day, for this is a day the universal Lord has made. We're grateful for this opportunity we have to expand our knowledge, to connect with each other. We're grateful for our ministries. We're grateful for our volunteers and all children and youth. And so it is. Amen. Okay, so I want to take a moment to go around and do introductions. So we'll just let you go one by one as you wish. And for the sake of time, I'm going to ask that we keep it to your name, your ministry, and your role in the YFM. So who would like to start?
Start.
Okay.
I'm Francis Carrillo. Our ministry is Unity of San Antonio, and my role is part-time teacher, part-time what we call angel or support of a teacher. I also sometimes serve in the role as a greeter, and in general, just floating and supporting where needed.
Wonderful.
I'm Tammy Carrillo. I am the Youth Ministry Director at Unity of San Antonio.
Wonderful. Who'd like to go next?
I can go next. I am Julie Stiff, and I'm with San Antonio, or San Antonio Unity of San Antonio, and I am the U Kids teacher on Tammy's team.
Oh, wonderful.
I am Rachel Lee. I am coming out of Springfield, Missouri. I'm the junior Sunday school coordinator.
Wonderful. Good to have you here.
I'm Debbie Franz out of the Center of Unity in Grapevine, Texas. I'm sorry, I don't have a video. I'm having challenges this morning. But I'm the Youth and Family Youth Education Director or Youth and Family Ministry Director, whichever you want to call it. So nursery to YOU.
Wonderful.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephen Fleming. I am the senior minister at Unity of New Orleans, and I'm happy to be here. I believe that there's someone else from Unity of New Orleans here. Yes, Susan is. And so we're here for the YFM training.
Wonderful. Great to have you with us.
Good to be here.
And you're muted, Barbara.
Way too early in the morning in Oregon to be doing this.
Yeah, it is.
I don't have my talking voice on yet. Again, Barbara Salvaggi, I'm the Youth and Family Ministry Director Coordinator at Unity of Portland.
Wonderful. Great to have you with us and so early in the morning.
Good to see you again.
And who do we have left?
I'm Beth White, and I'm in San Antonio, and I am just there to give support and especially prayer support for the children's ministry in San Antonio.
Wonderful. Susan, I don't believe we've heard from you. Emily, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm Jeanette's daughter. I'm also a Sunday school teacher at Unity Fort Worth, and I help her out whenever she needs anything with the Sunday school there. And I'm helping her co-host the meeting today, just running the admin stuff in the background.
She's the unofficial assistant director at Fort Worth. So she's my, I need somebody to do this, help Emily. So anyway, so I'm glad you all are here. I'm very happy to have you all with us today. And I'll tell you a little bit about me. I am your YFM regional consultant. I've been a YFM director for 10 years and am currently serving at Unity Fort Worth. And I am a LUT student. I will finish up in the end of October, if all goes according to plan, which it will. And I have a master's degree in social work. Have lots of experience working with children and families. And so I hope I can share a little bit of my experience and knowledge with you to help you with your classrooms. So since we are time limited, I'm going to ask that any questions that you have during this time that you write it in chat. Emily will be keeping track of those for us. And if there's one that she feels really is, rather urgent, why she'll grab my attention. Let's see. So I also want to let you know that as your consultant, I am here to support you in your ministries in any way I can. And one of those ways, of course, is trainings. We have a support call on the second Saturday of every month that Julie Core and I do. And I'm just available for you one-on-one too. If you ever have any type of a issue, concern in your ministry that you want some assistance with, let me know. And if you just have a question about something, I'm here. So that's my job, is to help you guys as much as I can. And if I don't know the answer to something, I got other people I can go to. So we'll always figure it out. So let me share my screen. Okay, so I wanted to start with a quote, Myrtle Fillmore quote that I'm sure you all are familiar with. Who will take care of the children? This question came to Myrtle Fillmore, Unity's co-founder, in a dream. You are to take care of the children. This is your work, was the answer she heard. Our mission is not to entertain the children, but to call them out. To be always entertained is to be dwarfed and dependent. To be called out is to follow the harmonious law of the soul's unfoldment. And I believe that the children are a part of our Christ consciousness, and as are all of us, and they therefore need our love and our attention to their spiritual development, which is really kind of what we're here for. But what about those times when their behavior is not all that fantastic and it's interfering with us giving them the attention and support they need, and interfering with us giving the other kids in the classrooms what they need? And that's what we're going to talk about today. And I want you to know right off the bat that everything I mention is an idea. Some things may be things that you want to try. Others maybe not. You know your kiddos the best, and it's okay for you to take what you can and use it and leave the rest. I also I don't really quite know how to mention this, but I think I would just want everyone to know that my intent is always to approach things from the best possible way you can. But there are times you may find when you're working with kids when you've got to take an action that may not be how you would really like to resolve that. And I'm talking about if things really start to get out of hand in a classroom, then you have to just go with your gut, really. But we'll talk more about that later. So I also wanted to talk about special needs and get that out of the way, because I think a lot of times we find that our kids that do have some disruptive behavior, they also have some special needs. And I just want to share with you a few things about them specific, and then everything else you can use with them or any other kids. I have found that it is best when you have a new student to ask the parent up front about any needs that you need to know about medically, mentally, is there anything you need to know? What I've seen is parents don't always put that on a registration card. And also, if they get them started talking about it, you get more information than what you're going to get on that card. And that's what you need. That's fantastic. And you need to also know if you're a director, your limits and your teacher's limits. If you have a teacher who finds it really, really hard to say anything but, sweetie, let's not do that right now, why, you need to know that, because that's going to help you know how you can best help this kid. I have found that with a lot of times kids, if I can put an assistant or someone kind of guiding that specific child, that helps a lot. And I think we should always avoid labeling and stereotyping. So much of the time I've run into that. You mentioned that a child's ADD, and it's like this image of what an ADD child is forms in the person's mind. And that's exactly what they expect. And if you set that expectation out there, that's what you're going to get. ADD kids, just for an example, they're all different. We all are unique and special in our own way. They definitely are. They don't exhibit the same ADD symptoms all the time. There's no, everyone fits this model. And they are just unique and special kids. They have their good days, bad days. Things like if they're on medication, sometimes that medication, they're on it during the week and off of it on the weekends. And that means that you have the child who is off medication and probably is going to be a lot more hyper and easily distracted. But remember, we do provide a safe place of love and acceptance where all children and teens can experience the awareness of their oneness with God and all life. So let's let's move to a positive environment, because I really think that the room can make a difference in a child's behavior. I think we all I know I do, I react to different rooms differently. It's like if I walk into a room that I find is pleasant and everything, I'm more upbeat and happy. If I walk into a room that I find isn't so pleasant to me, why then I tend to get kind of more down and quiet and not just kind of close myself off a little bit. So the first thing is make sure that the room is age appropriate. You want to make sure that if with younger kids, if there's toys that they are appropriate for that age, like the no small parts for the little ones. You also want to make sure that like your seating and tables are appropriate. Excuse me. You want to make sure, if I had a room full of couches for an elementary class, it's probably not going to work real well, because they like to jump to everyone sit as close as you can, real crowded, until somebody's not happy with that. And then they kind of start wiggling and squirming, and they can't keep their hands off of each other. And so it's better if you have individual seating or set them on the floor. So Also, think about your walls. Posters and paintings are great, but they should be age appropriate. Um, and avoid putting too much on the walls. I think we can sometimes feel like we have to cover all the space in a classroom, and really having open space works well and is best. Display their artwork. They love seeing their artwork on the wall. I love seeing their artwork on the wall. And something I do, and Emily's been a big help in creating these for me, is I have posters of the prayer for protection, the heart agreement, affirmations, just, those things that you can use as tools during your class time. Lighting is important. A bright room helps. If it's a dimly lit room, that's when people kind of start getting a little drowsy. And especially with your teens, they probably would rather be in bed sleeping anyway. So you give them a dimly lit room, and you've lost them. So natural light is really, really good to use. Dividing the room into different areas, if you have the space to do so, can really help with activities. Having different activities, having a space that's really open for like great games and circle time, that type of thing. And then having a side of the room that's like with tables for artwork and things that, you need to be sitting at a table. And you want to just make the room as inviting and pleasant as you possibly can. So the first thing, your first tool that you really have, and I love it, is heart agreements. And if you're not familiar with heart agreements, they basically are guidelines for all of our teacher, kids, everyone's behavior during the class. And you want to make sure that those agreements are age appropriate, and we'll get into how you're going to use it in behavior in a moment. But how you develop one is you lead an age appropriate discussion about agreements and rules with the kids. And then you invite them to come up with their own agreement. Do a brainstorming session where they give their ideas of what they expect from people. Do they want people to listen to what they say? Do they want there to be no hitting? Is usually one when I'm working with the younger kids that comes up. Keep your hands to yourself. Be kind, whatever is important to them, help them come up with. And also I have twice now I have been in the position of really kind of doing the start of a YFM program.
Recording
And
in progress.
both times I have found that let's see, I'm hearing some feedback. Okay, I think that's good. Okay, so both times I found that my creating just a very simple basic heart agreement to start with until we started getting kind of a core group, and then letting them create their agreement work best, because that way you're introducing the idea and they start, it gives them something to go off of when they're just starting in the program. So agreement guidelines, the fewer agreements, the better. Put specific rules into broader categories. If you've got like 2 or 3 things that kind of all go together, why find a way to make it just one rule. State everything in the present tense. We're not talking about past, and we're not talking about future. State the desired behavior rather than the negative, such as no's and the do not statements. You want to keep it positive. You want to keep it on, this is what we're aiming for. This is how we're going to be. Post it in the room and make it part of the opening. I find that it's good. We only see those kids for, an hour, maybe a little bit more on a Sunday morning. And so they forget about what the rules, what the heart agreement is. And so a reminder at the beginning of the class is really helpful. It also helps when you have visitors, because visitors have no idea what's expected of them. They're clueless. And so it helps them to understand, this is what's going to be expected of me here. So, and then you want to revise the agreement or yearly or when it's needed. Your lessons plans is also a tool, not a lesson. You want to offer activities that address different learning styles and multiple intelligences, which I'm talk a little bit more here in a minute about that. You keep it moving to avoid boredom and loss of momentum. Have active times. You want to have times in any class, you want to have times when there's some activity. Even if it's just stand up and everybody wiggle for a little bit. That can be just a 1-minute activity. You also want to, your lesson plan provides the structure for your class, and you want to keep that consistent. And, you know, for me, my structure is we have a opening circle time, and then we have an opening activity followed by the lesson, and then after that we break up into different activity groups based on what the kid's interest is. And then there's a closing. So having that type of structure, though, helps kids to know what to expect. And whenever you have a kid who you have a sub in the classroom, it's really, I love it how the kids will start telling the sub what they're supposed to do. If the sub is, you know, kind of looking at the lesson plan and what's next, why the kids start telling them, this is what we're doing, this comes next, and start guiding the sub. I love that. Let's see, let's move on to the learning styles. There's a difference between multiple intelligences and learning styles. The learning styles refer to how individuals prefer to process information and learn. And those are the key four. There's some other ones, but the ones that people feel are the main ones are visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and reading, writing. Now, multiple intelligence, on the other hand, are different types of intellectual abilities that individuals possess. And those are things like linguistic, logical, mathematical. They're more of these are the gifts that I have. These are the areas where I excel. And those two you can use in a classroom, but today we're going to focus on just the learning styles. I'm thinking probably at some other time I am going to do a workshop on the multiple intelligences. So for your visual learners, you want to have pictures on the walls are really helpful for them. Videos work great with them. Have found in the last couple of years, well, really since COVID, when doing classes online with COVID and videos were the best way for me to teach lessons, I started then applying it, using it in the classroom. And I find that using videos with the kids, I think really they're more attentive. Most of them are more attentive to it than they are just someone reading a story. Auditory is music, discussions, reading a story aloud. And the kinesthetic is your active or touchy-feely. And that's the crafts and the games and that type of thing. Reading and writing is books, writing, of course, and things like worksheets. So I have a list of, these are just a whole bunch of different things that I find are effective in classroom management and handling behavioral problems. And so I'm going to go through them. There's clearly others. Sometimes you have to just get creative. I find that if I watch a child that's having some problems and I just kind of sit back, observe them for a while, I can usually come up with an idea of what might work for that kid. How can I help this kid be able to process and be part of the class more than they are? Give them that sense of belonging. The first one, of course, is praise positive behavior. And that's not, and the one, that's really two different things. That's one is, of course, that we praise the entire classroom. I love how everyone shared in our discussion. I love all of your artwork. It's beautiful, that type of thing. But you can also use it with the individual kid. If you have a kid who tends to be really squirmy and rolling around on the floor and everything, when you have a circle time sitting in a circle on the floor, and you find them for even just a few minutes, they're sitting up and they're attentive and participating. Praise that behavior. Just say, hey, I love how you're sitting here with us. This is great. They respond to that. And the next one is change activity. You need to watch your classes for cues of when when the kids are starting to get restless, distracted, bored. And some of the things are they start talking among themselves. They start looking all around the room. They just kind of shut down, one by one. That means you need to move on. Whatever you're doing, it's no longer working, and you need to just move on. I think we've all had the experience, and I know my lesson plans sometimes are not the most fantastic lesson plans, and sometimes they really fail. And I and my teachers know that when that happens, I always say, just throw it up in the air and let it land wherever it does. Let go of it. Let go of it and come up with whatever you can to move on with. And one of the things that is on here also, that also is a way to managing behavior, is to go with whatever's happening at the moment. So every moment is a teaching tool. It's something you can teach a lesson on nearly everything that happens in a classroom. And sometimes just stopping what you're doing and teach about whatever's happening in the classroom is the best lesson you can possibly have. Get to know your kids, develop a rapport. The more you know about your kids, the easier it is for them and you to get along with each other, and the more they will listen to what you're saying to them. Give kids a task to do. A lot of times, if you give a kid that's kind of having a difficult time, give them a task to do. Let them pass out the pencils. Let them, take up what reading materials or whatever you've been working with, but give them a little task to do, and that makes them feel included and important. You want to have a piece or talk or I put talking space, that's wrong, quiet space. I don't know why I thought talking, but have a peace space or a quiet space in the classroom if you can. A corner is great where you can have some pillows or cushions, and that is the place where kids, whenever they start to become upset, they can go over and just have a little quiet time. You can ask a child if they need to go spend a little time in the peace space, or as kids get where they are used to it, they themselves will go off to this peace space, and it's just fine. Let them go, let them do it. If you have an assistant, you might want to, after the child has had a little bit of time there by themselves, have the assistant go over and sit with them. Sometimes it's just sitting with them, and sometimes, it's kind of just gently talking with them a little bit. letting them talk about what's going on with them. Talking sticks are very useful. And I know we're used to using talking sticks, but they're really good. I just want to point out they're really good when you have a child who loves to interrupt everyone. I know I've had a few of those that it's anyone starts talking, they have to start talking too. Using a talking stick stops that really fast. It takes care of it. You kind of have to remind them a few times, okay, when you have the stick, you can have the stick next, but let's listen to so and so first. Whenever there's two or more that are creating problem, and I was kind of thinking of the, younger kids can get into this, play fighting stuff, and it's distracting. Separate them, put them in different places, sit them at different ends of the table. With a circle, one of the things that we've found to be highly effective is to have a child sit next to the teacher, especially your ADD kids who have a hard time, sticking with what's going on. Why have them sit next to the teacher, and that way the teacher's there and they can kind of give them just a gentle whisper guide of, let's focus on what Sally's saying, or they can just kind of give them a little tap on the knee of, kind of like, it's okay, come back here to us, or, type thing. Emily's really good about using that. You have at times walk into her classroom and she'll have one on either side of her and one sitting right in front of her. So she surrounds herself with kids that she feels need to be sitting next to her. And the thing is, the only down on that is you get where everybody in the class wants to be the one sitting next to the teacher. So then you have to kind of start rotating kids sometimes. Change the activity. Now that's kind of mentioned that one before. Just change your activity, do something different. Also, something I don't think we necessarily always feel comfortable with is to stop the entire class and just discuss what is happening. This is really good, like if something happens with your teens. Just stop the class. Hey, what's going on? What's happening here? And get the kids started in talking about how they're experiencing what is happening, their feelings, and what can be done about it. Get them to look at how do we resolve this? How do we work with this? And again, you look for that teaching moment that's in that discussion. Sit in silence. This is one I like to use. A lot of people aren't real comfortable with it, but I find it works. If you have a class that is having a hard time settling down, I know a lot of times we'll do something like raise our hand with a peace sign, and that is a signal for everyone to stop. But for this is more like if you have some disruptive behaviors going on, of just stopping and sitting in the silence. It's really effective whenever everything goes quiet. It kind of brings kids back more into what's happening. Everybody was talking, or or the teacher was talking, and now suddenly everything's silent. So it's kind of that, whoa, what's happening here? And they realize you're waiting for them to join you in silence. Let's see, what else did I have here? Distraction. Distraction works really, really good with your little ones. Definitely, it's works like magic usually, but it also works with older kids too. I just have found that if you can just distract them off of whatever they're focused on, why it works. And the last one I wanted to mention was the remove a child from the classroom if needed. If there could be harm to the child or others, you have to remove them. This is when it's okay to touch them. Be careful though about pulling arms because you can cause injuries. One of the best techniques I know is to come up from behind them, wrap your arms around them in a bear hug, and then you can just usually escort them out of the room. I haven't ever had to do that in the Sunday school. I used to work in a program for emotionally delayed or just delayed preschoolers, rather severely delayed, and they would have meltdowns all the time, and they would become violent. Actually, it's pretty sad to watch a little 3-year-old become violent, but and you have to stop it. And the way I would do that is just walk up behind him, sit and grab my arms around them. Then I dropped through the floor, and I would just start rocking them. And usually sometimes I'd start singing to them too. It's kind of giving them that security that they need, but that's not what you're going to be doing. Know your limits, I would say too. You know, we all have our limits of what we can and can't do. We're not experts. We're not professionals. We're not really trained to handle everything, and you need to know what you can and cannot handle. And you know, there may be a child that you work with for a month or so, and you can't find it. And during that month, you want to be talking to the parent, trying to get their input on what do they use at home? How do they manage this? Most of the time, they're very open. They want to help you. They totally understand their child's behavior, and they're not upset that you're pointing out something about their kid. At least that's been my experience. So talk to the parents. Your parents are a good resource for you. Then we have Jeanette's what to do plan when everything else fails. And for that, you want to do 4 things. And I vary this a little bit, but it's pretty consistent, and it's one I teach my teachers. You gently, politely, of course, is the first thing I always start with. Ask for the behavior to change. You know, please, I need statements are good. You know, John, could you please stop such and such? I really need you to do that. And usually for most kids, it's just that little reminder. Pointing out the heart agreement, using some of the other tools we've talked about. Try a few things, see what works. If nothing's working, then you need to let the director know, and the director handle it from there. Like I was saying, we're not really equipped, all of us, how to handle every single behavior with a kid. So bring the director in. And whenever I go into a classroom, when I've received a text that I'm needed, my first step is usually I just sit down and watch what's happening. I want to get a feel for what's going on, see if I can figure out what's happening with the child, or what might be triggering a child to behave a certain way. And then after that, I usually pull them aside and talk with them about the behavior. I try to find out what's going on from their side. Hey, you know, I notice that you seem to be really kind of mad today. What's happening? And sometimes, you know, a lot of times their behavior isn't necessarily about us or what's happening in our classroom at the moment. It's about stuff that's going on at home. It's about the argument they had in the car on the way to church. It's about things that are not us. It's about things that are happening in their lives. And it's things that they're acting out in our classroom because it's a safe place. It's a safe place for them to express themselves. I look at all behavior as being an expression of who you are. And as an adult, as we become adults, we gain more skill and control over our behavior. But for kids, they don't necessarily have that. They're learning. So pull them aside, talk with them. Sometimes when you talk with them, you can come up with an easy fix. You know, it may be as simple as you have a kid that says, well, I just don't know anybody here. I don't have any friends here. Or it may be I'm only here because my parents are making me. That can happen with if you have a kid that just really refuses to participate in anything. Why you can just, say, okay, I understand that, but how can we make the best of this? What can we do to make this a little more comfortable for you? And usually they'll start coming up with ideas. It may be something like, well, if I had a buddy I could talk to, they'll start telling you what it is they need. When that doesn't work, when whatever I come up with as a fix doesn't work, then I text the parent. And I know no one likes to do this. I used to be kind of scared of doing it myself. I was never sure how a parent was going to react. I always felt like I was probably running a family away from the church because I pointed out something about their kid, but I found that that's not the case at all. And so you want to text the parent and just in the text, I usually say you're needed in Sunday school. As the director, I would usually meet them at the door and explain the situation to them before we went into the classroom and just ask them to talk to the kid. Emily and I have a kind of a funny story about that happened in her class once whenever we had a visitor and visitors sometimes act out. They've got to test the limits. They want to see what's okay, what's not okay. What's your limit? Where do you say enough is enough? And Emily, we had a visitor who was kind of acting out a little bit, and Emily was having a hard time with them. And she texted me, and I walked into the classroom, and one of the other boys who I probably a year before had texted his mom because of an issue. Why he turns to the other boy and he says, you don't want her to text your mom. Oh, you really don't want her to. You better stop right now. So, the kids learn, and parents have a way of, and it doesn't, I don't want to think that I'm getting a kid into serious trouble. But I also have to recognize and acknowledge that I don't really have any control over what happens later. I do have control over what happens. I've had a parent come over who said, okay, I'm just going to give him a spanking, and that was an absolute no, you're not. Um, and then I usually gave him my talk on spanking kids, but anyway, I find for the most part, parents do want to help. Okay, just some miscellaneous things. If a teacher becomes angry, and even just slightly, you need to remove them from the classroom, at least for just a few minutes, a chance for them to get themselves pulled back together and to get centered. We don't need teachers becoming angry, and kids can push your buttons. Kids can make you be angry sometimes, just like everyone else. They can push buttons, and sometimes some of them are really, really good at that. If a child is out of control and a risk to himself and others, I went over this, but I'll say it again, restrain and remove him from the classroom, get help, contact the parent. In a classroom, there should be no yelling, no name calling, rude, derogatory remarks, hitting, spanking, and you've got the idea. We want to approach every situation with as much love and be as gentle as we possibly can. And directors, train your teachers in what to do. You are the example. You model for them how to treat the children. So be mindful of that as in your role as director, that you're teaching them, and include in your trainings a little section on how to manage behaviors. Have your own set of kind of these are the steps to follow. I don't really like for my parents to contact a I don't like my teachers to contact a parent without me being involved in it. I feel like that type at that level, it needs to come from the director, not the teacher. And sometimes too, I've found that with the teachers, it's something that if I know how they're feeling and what's going on, I can guide them through it rather than them having to turn to the parent. And we are here to teach. We want to manage those behaviors that are disruptive and move on. None of us should feel like we have to put up with inappropriate behavior. It may be necessary to talk with the parents, ask them how to manage the behavior. There may be something you can do as well. Sometimes we have to admit that this is something that we are not equipped to handle, and we are not the experts. And I think sometimes we have to look at ourselves of what am I doing? What am I doing that's triggering this child? There may be something about you that's triggering them into the behavior that they're exhibiting. Trust your instinct is really what it comes down to, the bottom line. Know your thoughts and feelings, but don't use them, don't act off of your thoughts and feelings, but act off of your instinct. If you know you need to act, do it. Just do it. If something in you is saying, I really need to take control of this, do it. Think it through if you have time. There's situations when you don't. I actually had one of those once. I had a few of them, but one of them I had two teenage boys, brothers, who got into a fist fight right before Sunday school started, and found myself having to quickly jump into action and break the two up, and then grab one of my teachers that is also a public school teacher, grab her to take one of them aside, spend some time talking about what was going on and what was happening, and I took the other one and helped them to resolve their little conflict they were having. Being brothers, why, sometimes those things happen. So anyway, trust your instincts. That's really my main thing, is just what is best to do. So okay, I'm going to stop my share. There we are. So now, Emily, did we have any questions?
We didn't during the lecture. No, we did not.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions now? Anything I said that you'd like to discuss further? Any ideas on how you manage behavior that you'd like to share?
I have a question. The classroom that I am currently running is probably more than 50% neurodivergent, many autistic children, a lot of aggressive tendencies. It's difficult to get them to focus at all. And now I'm very new in this position, and so I'm just still kind of observing. But how do you recommend getting them involved in a routine? Right now, our Sunday school is so small that we've got the babies all the way up to teens in one large, probably 20-foot room that can be subdivided. If we've got more than 2 teens, they'll leave the room because it gets rowdy, for instance. But most of the time, it's 0 through probably age 15, 8 to 12 of them, half of them autistic.
Okay.
And so just trying to figure out how to even hold that container. They want to, maybe the church is really excited about getting them in the service just for the beginning music, and then walking them back to the classroom, for instance. That's a great first step, I think. But getting them to line up and follow along is, we're not there yet.
Yeah.
So
it takes practice, it takes consistency. You've got a real challenge. You really
Sure.
do.
Yeah.
It's going to take all the patience in the world.
Sure.
And you're going, you'll need that. You're going to definitely want to come up with a very simple, easy structure. Don't let any of your activities with that group, you don't want to have any activities that go on for very long.
Right.
They're going to need different activities. And
Right.
you want more activities geared to different things. Like you want maybe to do a craft, although you're going to find some of them really have physical disabilities and
Yeah.
difficulty in doing it. Like Emily doesn't mind me sharing, I know, but she has dysgraphia. So for her as a kid, why a lot of times those craft activities and everything were extremely challenging. So you don't want to do
Right.
focus on any one thing,
Right.
have games.
Right.
They have problems with social skills. And
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
yeah. You've
Seeing
seen
it.
that. They
Yeah, yeah,
don't
yeah.
know how to read people's cues.
hmm
And so you're going to have to be very specific with them of what you need from them.
So then I guess my follow-up to this is thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I do have 4 children of my own, so I'm kind of running a little circus over here anyway. So
You're
not
used to the
intimidating.
circus.
Yeah. Yeah, but I've only been doing this for me. I say the word only here. I've only been doing this for 4 Sundays. Brand
Oh,
new,
wow,
right?
you are brand new at
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Fresh and squishy. But the church is asking me about the structure. The church is asking, what am I doing? The church is asking, they're excited. They're
Right.
like, a youth person. Now we're going to see all the things. And so I'm trying to figure out how to be mindful of these kids and their process and observing them and earning their trust, and also give the church the structure and the physical evidence of crafts being accomplished, the
Right,
pictures on the
yeah,
wall.
yeah, because
Um,
everybody loves seeing the kids walk
of
out with
course,
crafts
of course.
after Sunday school. I mean, it's like, oh, look what they made.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But with your class, I was also thinking about the being in the sanctuary at the beginning. You
Mhm.
might want to hold off on that,
I agree.
at least consider it until they do have a rapport with you.
hmm
Because at this point, they don't know you. And
Right.
so for you to say, okay, we're going to line up, it really doesn't click with
Yeah.
them yet,
No, yeah, it's been wild. I have under
You got
12
it.
children every week, 12 or fewer children every week. And I have not seen more than 4 of the same kids any week that I've been there yet.
Yeah,
So,
which
yeah,
is
it's all
is
just
typical.
very, oh, sure. Yeah.
You'll usually only have just maybe one family because I know we had a family once that mom was part of the music team, so they were there every single Sunday.
Fair.
But most kids, they're not going to be there every Sunday.
Yeah.
And that makes it harder though for your job working with that special group because they don't have that. It's harder for them to remember what the rules were and everything.
Right. Right.
I would suggest also you develop a very, very simple heart agreement and
Yeah.
start using it to just, train them, and when the behavior doesn't fit in, say, remember our heart agreement, you can even go
Yeah. Yeah.
to a poster and point, and that will help kind of reinforce all that.
Yeah, we as a mom, my husband and I, we just decided to use the 4 agreements for our children, and that has been good enough by Don Miguel Ruiz. And
Yeah,
so that's easy
do
enough to
that.
translate. Yeah, we'll start there, and yeah, if we can, like you said, just revisit in a year when we have a class and there is attention and
Then, right. I would also encourage you're having enough kids that it sounds to me like you may need to look at which age groups you have the most kids in and
Mhm.
start recruiting teachers. Because I
Yeah,
think
it's like I said,
you
it is
need
still
to,
rotating, so I'm kind of waiting to make sure that we can hold on to some of them and we've got a good check-in process and things before I try to pull,
yeah.
too many hands in. Yeah.
If you need any help with that or with anything, Emily, I think my email is in the chat, right?
Her email's in the chat. You can see where to email her there.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I'm here to help. So, bounce anything off of me. We'll
Sure.
find answers. There's always answers.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else have anything? Barbara.
I just want to speak to Rachel. After COVID, I've been in this work for 40 years. And after COVID, I felt like I didn't know anything,
Yeah.
The kids were all different. I've started up a number of different programs, big, small. I worked in a church that had almost 1,000 kids in their program.
My goodness. Wow.
So I felt I had some skills. All right.
Yeah, of
I
course.
was proud. My ego really liked that I had some skills. So after COVID, we'd have one kid, and then we'd have two, then we'd have kind of like what you're saying. Then we wouldn't see them for weeks. And I thought I tried everything in my bag, to go back to some of the routines that I knew the kids liked, and nothing happened. And I finally just sat down. I had other lady with me, and I said, what do we know about kids? This is not, nothing's working. Nothing's working. What do we know about kids? And we just sat and we went into the silence, and the word play came up.
Of course.
Play, of course. That's
Yeah.
their basis. That's
Yeah.
that's where they come from. That's where they want to go. That's how they learn.
Yeah.
And so, especially with the kids that you have,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe you can even tell your minister or whatever and say, no, I don't have a program. I just want to get to know them. My job, my goal right now is just for them to know me and for me to know. That's my goal. That's my structure.
Okay, cool. It's good to hear that you guys think that that's appropriate to do, because I was thinking to give it a good 90 days before I'm trying to tell the kids what to do and pass out worksheets.
Do you know how long it took before I got a core back, after, no matter how good my skills were or were not?
Yeah.
And all the years, 6 months.
Wow.
6 months of play, Sunday after Sunday after Sunday, because my goal was to know who they were. My goal was that was the Christ in me and the Christ in them. And that's what I wanted. I just wanted that connection. And it took us 6 months before I felt, we talked about it, and it was like, oh, I think it's working. It's beginning to work. It's beginning to work.
Cool.
We have a core group that began to come in, and one kid would say, well, what are we going to do today? And I thought, oh, we're getting there. Oh my goodness, we're getting there. They want to be. So that's just my suggestion, because those kids, I'm thinking of, if you ask them questions, bounce a ball at them. Just have a big ball and bounce a ball.
Keep their hands busy. Yeah. We've been I'm trying to teach them to walk together. So we walk out to our Unity Church has a painted labyrinth in the parking lot. And so we'll go out sometimes when they're busy in their bodies and walk the labyrinth.
That's a good activity.
Yeah. So anyway, just a suggestion, because I know that that's really challenging, and with the kids that you have, but they'll respond. They'll finally go, oh, okay, it's safe here. Okay, she's safe. And then that's when you can begin to decide what your program is. Before you have that, right? You just don't have anything. You have a bunch of kids.
Yeah, I know. I'm still trying to have kids. Yeah.
Well, something else you mentioned early on that I think is worth considering too. You said there's a couple of teenagers that a lot of times leave because of all the noise and everything. Try to encourage them to stay and assist you.
Yeah. So there is a youth director at our facility that I think also appreciates being able to leave when it gets loud. So she will take those one or two and leave the room. And then I have one other set of hands that will hold babies, but so far My
Wow.
1.5-year-old is the only infant, and so it's just a group of mine. So yeah. 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 Okay.
Bev, did you want to say something?
Can I share a little bit about the labyrinth? I attended a different denomination. They had a labyrinth, and this woman was very much into labyrinths, and she shared this story about this
Yes.
group of middle school boys, autistic or ADHD, and she had them walk the labyrinth about 2 or 3 times, and that she said that the teachers called her back and said for about 3 or 4 days afterwards they were calm. So
Oh,
walking, you know,
yeah.
you know how you can walk and calm
Yes.
down when you walk.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm gonna, I've had years of no formal education, but I've had years of working with children. But yeah, anything
Yeah.
calming, throwing a ball. Sometimes I would
Yeah.
just one of those squishy balls, those spiky balls, and just
Yes.
stuck it in my pocket. Okay, let's all go in a circle,
Yeah.
and then can throw out questions, you can do something, a spiritual question or something. And
Yeah.
if they respond, they respond. I'm sorry, I'm just jumping in here, but
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Thank
but
you.
but my question is how to work with special needs children, because sometimes I'm not told they're special needs. I was
Mhm.
told one time I wasn't told that a little girl was deaf, and
Oh,
so
wow.
and
Oh.
so I have, I are they just acting up, or do they have ADHD, or and I'm not
What, you're trying to
trained.
figure it out.
And I'm okay. I'm gonna take that as a behavior issue, but I don't, but so I think it helps to, you know, to know a little girl is deaf and she does no lip reading, but I need to be able to talk to her directly. I need to face. That would be helpful.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I've been in so many situations where I've just been thrown in there. All of a sudden I'm a Girl Scout leader, so this has been my, so I think to how to understand the children, and I don't, especially when they have special needs, where they're coming from. And my husband and I are raising a grandchild, so that's a whole different dynamics. So we have, and we're learning how with other grandparents raising a grandchild, there's a whole different dynamics in there. So we have to be a little more patient, a little more understanding with this behavior issue, and everything. So how to deal with children that are coming from all sorts of backgrounds, but also keeping the classroom calm.
Yeah. And that's the whole, that's the issue right there.
Yeah.
Is that, I have to comment, the little deaf girl and everything, that is one of those situations where just spending a little time with a parent at the time they registered and asking would have probably been, they would have fixed the problem, because then you would have known.
They want their child to be as normal as possible, but also we have to consider, okay, she does have a, you don't want to say disability, but
Right, that there's yeah.
yeah, it's something to consider. Or child is wearing a brace on their leg, or something that you have to have a little more understanding.
Reasonable accommodations. Just
Yes,
maybe just an area at check-ins, just requesting accommodations. And if you don't want to tell me your child is autistic, fine, but reasonable accommodations would be give him his own chair.
Right.
Let him sit by people, something like that could be jotted down. Maybe that's just
the reason it's important to develop those relationships with the parents. I'm sitting here thinking that one of the ways you can do that is to, we like to have like family nights and everything, but have your teachers be there too. Because if your teachers are there, then they can start developing a relationship with the parents. And as the parents become more comfortable with the teacher, they're going to be more comfortable opening up about, this is what my kid struggles with. This is or this is the problem we have at home. I've had so many parents, whenever I did talk to a parent about something that was going on with a kid, they'd say, "Yep, happens at home too." Sometimes the parents don't know, what's behind the behavior, but they have an idea. They can share with you what they've tried and haven't tried, and you can a lot of times get a clue out of what to do. It really, of course, the two-person rule in a classroom is a must to me. And part of that is so that you can have a teacher teaching and an assistant there to help with those kids that need that extra help and who need that extra assistance because of things like ADD and being easily distracted. The thing like with having the child sit next to you, that type of thing can help a lot. Emily, do you have anything else on that? You've been in that place a lot.
So on whenever you have a kid and like the parent doesn't know that the child maybe is ADHD and you're sitting there going, oh gosh. Let's see. So my experience as an ADHD kid too, is it's really trying to meet the kids where they're at and see what needs they seem to be expressing. A child that isn't paying attention is most likely bored. How do I make this not boring? A child but like the deaf child, that's harder because like there's no way besides knowing. But I don't know. I don't know that I'm making sense on my answers, Mom. um, yeah, I guess it's just meeting the kids where they're at, trying to figure out what needs work best, like you would with any other kid. It's just thinking outside of the box more. I also have auditory processing disorder. That's not being deaf, but lip reading sure does help me in communicating with other people. Because my brain sometimes goes, I can't hear you, what? And so, seeing that a child is staring at your lips indicates, oh, that child, for some reason, I don't know why, they could be deaf, they could have auditory processing disorder, needs to hear what I'm saying. So it's just paying attention to your class and managing what cues your kids are giving you, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so. I think that it is that kind of being in tune with the kids, learning how reading their body language and their facial expressions and listening to what they're telling you.
I think coming from a perspective of there's not something wrong with them, but coming from a perspective of that the acting out is because something's not working for them.
Exactly.
Well, can really change, like just changing that perspective of they're having a behavior problem or they're acting bad or they're a bad kid because they can't sit still is a completely different perspective than getting curious about, oh, the kid's not, this kid's having problems in the class. What's going on with them that they're having a hard time? Like you said, it could be something at home. It could be they have, like ADHD or something. And maybe it hasn't been diagnosed, or maybe the teacher, maybe wasn't in the loop when that was disclosed. But if you get curious about it and like you said, pay attention to the cues, I think you end up with a much better outcome for the kid.
Absolutely. And you're right, that kind of also goes into the avoiding the labeling. You're working with this precious soul, every single one of them, and that's what you want to see, and that's why you're there, is because of that beautiful soul. So, doing what you can to help them. And, also I say, keep in mind, we are time limited with them. We don't, most of their life, we're not around for. So we're very time limited, and it does take, I think, a lot of times, spending more and more Sundays with a kid before you really understand what's happening, and just having that patience of it. It's all going to come to light in time. you know,
It really does. If you give them
sometime this is all going to come into, I understand now. Because I know as a director, I've had times when we've had kids that I'd sit there and watch them and watch them and watch them, and I could not figure out what was going on, body language or anything. And I would just be like, I've got to come up with an answer. And then suddenly, out of the blue, one Sunday, there it was. And things from there on would be just so much easier. So it's having patience too. You gotta have patience with them.
I'd like to, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to go back to what we're like helping Rachel. I'd like to just point out that there's Julie put some really good information in the chat on activities and things that help with that type of, when you're dealing with autistic kids, that can really help you. And I would say that with that group of kids, I know for us, we were building from ground up after COVID. I stepped in, we were closed for a year and a half. I stepped into the position and we had one room, 2 or 3 kids. Now we have 4 classes and 20 kids, and on a pretty regular basis. But what I found was, and especially with with the range that you're dealing with or that you have coming, I think structure is super important. So doing the same thing over and over and then adding play into that, because that's where the kids start to feel safe, is when they know what to expect, especially kids on the autistic spectrum. And so I wouldn't just go in there and have let them play for an hour. I found that anytime we did that, we found incredible, that's when we had the worst discipline problems, is when we would do that. It was a structure that really made a difference. And I love what Beth was saying about that you have like a labyrinth. I mean, maybe you would walk out and go straight into the labyrinth and have them walk that, and then go into the classroom and sit in a circle and do opening circle. So, just finding with your group what works. And I know that your group rotates. Ours did too for a long time. Now we've got a set of kids that are coming back regularly, but it wasn't like that for the first year and a half, 2 years. I direct messaged you with my contact information if you want to collaborate. I'd love to.
Anyone have anything else they want to add? Then I have some questions for you. And this is really just to help me with how I can best serve you. And what I'd like to know is, and my time is going to be shifting. Last year been really focused on the LUT stuff. And with that coming to an end, I'm going to have more time to focus on this job, which is where I want to focus. But I would like to know how can I serve you? More trainings help? More like support type calls of where, specifically geared for directors or geared for teachers? Just how do you think a regional consultant can help you? I know I'm putting everybody on spots. Like, I haven't thought about this.
Hey,
I just like opportunities to get on these calls. I mean, I'm new here, so I don't know how often you guys do these things. But I think any opportunity that we have to see what we're all doing, especially if we are across a region and able to kind of see different environments and different containers that we're working in, I think that's really valuable.
Okay. The support calls, that's a lot of what we do in them. And like I said, they're the second Saturday at 10 o'clock. And you can go to the website to register for those, and then you'll get the link and you'll receive notifications on them. I have been considering possibly, because for the support call right now, since we haven't had a regional consultant for some years, right now we have Julie and I leading it together. And I have been considering breaking that into 2 different support calls. one for YOU and one for everything else. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like it needs to stay together? It's better all together or separated? Any thoughts on that?
It probably would be better if it's separated, just because the how everything is for YOU is very different than the youngers. You know, and since I do already have somebody who can is beginning to take the lead on the YOU, then that would work for me personally. But you know, and for us, because I work on the weekends, and like I am today, but I'm going into work late. But it's for you know, so I schedule my work schedule around when the calls are.
Right.
Yeah, I like them combined personally. I like being able to have just one call that would cover everything. That would be two different calls that I would need to be on then. And I think that, you know, I don't think we have enough of either group coming right now to separate.
To separate.
You know, if at some point more people showed up to the calls, then it might make more sense to separate them out.
I've considered also just using the breakout rooms and, you know, everybody meeting together to start with, and then, you know, breaking it out into, okay, if your focus is YOU, you know, this is where you go. If your focus is everything else, this is where you go. And
I like that idea.
Breaking it out under one meeting, just two options.
The problem with that is not everyone has two separate, like YOU versus YFM. A lot of people have one room classrooms and they don't have, how are they going to be at both places? I have amazing YOU sponsors, but they're not available necessarily to be on the calls on Saturdays. And so I would be the one trying to get the information over to them and be on the call. So again, I think that presents some problems for people who are running one room classrooms.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're probably just not far enough out of COVID, you know, even though it's a long time ago, but I think the churches are still rebuilding.
Yeah, that's what I
Oh,
think.
definitely.
Yeah.
How many of you, and just raise your hand if you are have a one room classroom situation?
Yeah, I mean, basically.
2. Is that
3?
okay? I just was kind of wondering. I've been thinking we might need to spend some time just on that because it's a challenge. I have that situation now too, and it is a challenge to have all ages in the same room. You know, if you do have room where you can break it out in the smaller groups, it helps. But if you have a small room, then it really becomes an issue. So,
you kids too.
Anyway, that's something I've been thinking about. So, any other ideas on how I can support you?
Well, I think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, this came up I was told by Jessica, this came up on the call, but those videos that she said you talked about videos that you're using, and I tried to find them and I couldn't. So just a link to find them, and I may have been looking in the wrong spot. Very well likely. That's what was happening. So, because especially with the older kids, I really want to start utilizing, I have been myself downloading YouTube videos, you know, so they had something visually to watch that ties into the lesson. But you know, but I want to explore and see what you know, that there is through Unity.
Okay, I'll see that you get that, Debbie.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it.
But
Okay,
just getting together on a regional level is quite something, because my husband and I have been in and out. Because we've lived in small towns and we're close to unities, we've sort of been in and out of different unities. We've attended 9 different unities in 2 different states. So, but they're all each individual. Every unity church is very unique, which is great. But to have this kind of a communication, connection, learning from one another.
Beth, I can help you get the link and you can join the regional call each month if you'd like.
Okay.
Yeah, the best way to do that though is to just go online and register, because if you get registered, then you'll receive notifications when an event is coming up and you'll know about it.
So she's going to need to know where to go online.
Okay. Okay.
So, and just so everyone knows, it was not our church that had the deaf person that we didn't know was deaf.
No, it wasn't.
That
No,
happened
I was,
that
no,
happened
it
in
was,
a different place.
it was in Washington State, okay? It was with another youth group. It wasn't even with Unity. So I was trying to use an example that
Yeah,
wasn't
of
personal,
not
okay?
knowing
Yeah,
what's happening.
yeah.
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 All right.
Is there currently a call every month just to focus on the YOU?
It's combined. We have
It's
one
all
support
combined
call
right now.
and it's combined. Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of times the focus does seem to be on YOU, but it's combined.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, just to throw my 2 cents in, this training was really great, and just from the information that was put out, I think that Tammy, she does a great job at filtering the information down to, to her team and everything. So, from my standpoint as a teacher, we can just receive that information through Tammy. So,
Yeah.
but
And it's good to have Tammy doing that for you.
yeah, I know we appreciate her. She does.
I can tell you just from a little bit I know, she does an excellent job.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah. So, okay. Trying to think what I've come up with in terms of possibilities of things to offer. I'm leaning towards having more trainings on different things. Part of my feelings on that is, and I'm kind of have heard it a little bit in this call. So many are really new to YFM post-COVID that, that did cause a big disruption in all our YFMs. And a lot of times we've had new directors, a lot of churches have had new directors step up and everything. And so I feel like offering more trainings could be really helpful. Would you agree that that's probably needed? I think so. Yeah. Um, one of my things I struggle with is knowing those churches that are just getting started because they don't really know to reach out to the region. And one of the things on that I struggle with is the fact that this position was vacant for about 10 years before I took it. And so I want to say everything was lost because that's kind of how it's felt to me. It is that I'm having to build the program because there just wasn't anything here. But I'm glad to be here for you all. And like I said, anytime I can do anything, let me know. So
Thank you.
It seems that having been one of those new people 3 years ago, I think, I would recommend reaching out to the churches themselves and letting them know that you exist. When I took over, we didn't have a minister, so that would have been a particularly difficult challenge to get connected to you. But at least for the churches that have ministers, reaching to them and letting them know
that's what I'm trying to do. Have just started working on more and just through some of the communications with ministers of trying to make them more aware that I'm here so that whenever they have something come up with the YFM, they know where they can turn or where they can send their director. So
that's how I found Jeanette. She reached out to the minister and then went, oh, even though I've, really have been doing this role for 20 years, between two different churches, I didn't know about these, Jeanette and her, and we are only 30 minutes apart.
Right down the road from each other.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So does everybody know that about the rally in June and the retreat for the Uniteens in October? Is everybody aware of those events?
Yes, we know.
If you're not, you can again find it on our website, but Legacy is a rally for YOU that'll happen in June for the YOU kids, the older kids, and then we'll have a Uniteam retreat mid-October, and that's going to be at Unity of Dallas.
You know, I would like to say one thing that I think would be a big support for a lot of churches, youth ministry, and I've heard this from other directors and sponsors, that it's wanted and needed, is for us to be able to communicate and collaborate together, not just on the call. And one way to do that would be to have a directory that we can opt into. Another way would be to have like an app like Slack, where we can actually opt in ourselves to join it, and we can take ourselves off it, but we can then start collaborating together on different events regionally. We can collaborate together on, hey, I've ran a one-room school before, I can help you with that, I've got ideas about it, or share lesson plans. Like we can collaborate on a regular basis that way. And I think that would be something that would be very supportive for the region.
We have been trying to work on finding a way that we can set up something where everyone can share resources, so that you can post lesson plans and different things that you used. But it's not here yet, but it is kind of in the works. So it's on
being able
the
to talk to each other and find each other is a big
Right.
one. It's hard to do that. I found it very, very difficult when I first got started, not knowing who to reach out to or how to do it. Being able to connect with each other, I think would be very powerful.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. When I first started, there actually was a regional consultant for about the first year, and then there wasn't one. And so I went through that, not really sure of what I was doing sometimes. And let me also mention, though, there are trainings on the UWM website. There are training material available there where you can get information. And National also is starting to look at and how they can best support all of us. So I think we're going to see some things coming out of National that we haven't seen for a while too. So
one last comment, the link that I put in about the ARC, which is a nonprofit organization. I don't know if you all are aware of that organization, but they do have local chapters in different cities, and they provide very valuable resources. And so if you reach out and let them know, you're youth ministry director or what have you, and you're looking for some free resources, trainings or what have you, there are free trainings out there. They would be the ones to help you for, special needs individuals. So just want to
Cool.
put that there.
that's fantastic. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought to call them.
Well, Jeanette, I want to say thank you for everything that you've done to put this YFM training together for us this morning. I have two of my teachers for Unity of New Orleans. I grew up in Unity, and I actually grew up at Unity of New Orleans, as a matter of fact. I was in our YOU ministry. And one of the things that I can remember clearly were all of the principles and teachings that I was taught as a child from a child perspective. And so I would be interested, or we would be interested in seeing seeing whatever training Unity Worldwide Ministries has, like, surrounding the five principles, as well as a few other principles that we can basically be able to continue to instill into our young, fertile minds, that will be able to assist them in creating the kind of lives that they choose to lead as they develop and grow up And so in the spirit of empowerment. So we would be interested in that.
Okay, thank
yeah.
you. I'm glad you brought that up for a couple of reasons. One, it's like, I know some of the most rewarding times I've had is whenever a child, teen has shared that something happened at school or in their life, and they applied something that we had talked about in class and how well it worked. That's just one of those most rewarding times as a teacher you can have, at least to me. The other thing, it's real interesting you bring that up, because just this week I was talking with the regional consultant in the Southeast region, and we were talking about working together on having a training that would just, we're calling it right now Unity Basics, cover the principles and the 12 powers and just go through all of it. And metaphysical interpretation, just kind of give people more of a better understanding of that. So that seed has been there, and you just made it grow just a little bit more. So
Perfect. That's what we're interested in. And
okay.
so as soon as you get that information, please share
It'll
that
be
with
out
Unity
there.
of New Orleans.
Yeah, it'll be out there. I think you're going to see a little bit more of that coming along too, of trainings and things being done with regions working together on it, because that seems to be kind of coming together more than I think. It's kind of always seemed to me the regions were rather separate when it came, at least to really in everything, pretty separate in how they operate and function. And I'm starting, at least on the YFM level, to see more of a coming together and working together on things like training. So I hope that continues. So anyone
Thank
else
you,
have
Jeff.
any ideas on trainings?
That would be something.
I love knowing what you want to hear about.
That would be something I would be really interested in too, since I'm on the regional board as the YFM, representative.
Mhm.
And to have it up, because as somebody said, we're also different, but the material's not different. The material is basic. It's been there. It hasn't changed at all through all the years.
That's right.
So that if we had something across the country, for all the regions, then we could get that basic stuff out. So I'm interested. So keep Oregon posted on that.
Okay, we will. Saying that the material and everything, it made me think about how old the Unity lesson plans are. I know that's something that we struggle with, is the material is so old. All I can say on that one right now is that all of us are aware of it, and it's probably going to take a while, but eventually there'll be some new stuff come out. It's just going to take time.
Yeah.
So it's not easy to develop the whole set of curriculum. If you look at the curriculum and think about having to write that whole thing, it takes time. It does. So
I would be interested, maybe outside of maybe how we're operating our programs, in trainings for fundraising, for getting more people into the program, new membership kind of training, except youth focused, of course. How to make the most of going to a rally, how to, like, can we host a camping trip? What does that look like? That sounds hard and scary. These things. I'd love to have conversations, about the big scary stuff we're all trying to do to like build our programs. And
you will find a lot of that gets discussed in the support calls too. So
cool.
if you're going to make a second Saturday call,
Yeah.
you're going to get a lot out of that. So
Cool. Okay.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you all go early unless anyone has anything else to add. I appreciate every one of you being here, and I definitely appreciate everything you do for the YFM. you're very special, and you have a wonderful gift to share with everyone. So I
Well,
thank
thank
you
you.
for that.
Thanks for your support.
Thanks,
You're
everyone.
welcome.
Have a
I'm
good
around,
weekend.
I'm around. If you need me for anything, let me know.
Thank
Okay.
you, Jeanette.
Reach out.
Thank you.
Always
All right.
open to learning more.
Bye.
Bye.